March.
We've been previewing what's expected to happen in Congress today. To take a deeper dive now, we want to bring in Hofstra University constitutional law professor James Sample, who's joining us this morning. James, as always, thank you so much for joining us. So we're looking at two events today, the results of the Georgia Senate election and this joint meeting of Congress to make the electoral votes official. But they're separate events, James, but aren't they sort of really part of a larger story, which is who's going to gain control and who's losing it?
Absolutely, Darlene. I think that's a great point and a great question. You know, the Georgia election results last night and today, and particularly if Jon Ossoff holds on and is declared victorious, and the Democrats then will have the Senate beginning in 2 weeks when Vice President Kamala Harris will then be presiding and give the Democrats an effective majority by breaking the tie. If that actually appears to be the case as today goes on, it is really going to blunt the force of what was already a desperate and anti-democratic effort to overturn the results of the November election. You know, there's a sort of phrase, there's never really a good day for an anti-democratic coup. But if you are a member of the Republican Party and you were thinking about trying to overturn the will of voters today and to grandstand on the floor of Congress, boy, based on what happened in Georgia last night, it's an especially bad day for a coup.
Mm-hmm. James, it seems we're having the same debate today, though, that we had when we used to talk to you back in November, which is, did the states have the right to change certain rules to allow certain types of early voting and mail-in voting? The president's supporters claim they exceeded their authority. We had that argument in November, as we said. Now we're having it this morning, January 6th.
You're absolutely right, Michael. And the key here is that the arguments that we discussed in November were considered by the courts. We have court systems in this country for a reason, and they require evidence, actual evidence for a reason, proof. And the president's campaign and the presidential campaign lost over 50 cases. It's an astonishing number when you really look into it. And most of those cases weren't just losses. They were losses that absolutely pointed to a glaring lack of actual evidence. It is one thing to make claims. It's another thing to actually have to prove them. And the president and his team, they lost again and again, and today that loss will become official.
All right, and Professor James Sample, as always, great talking to you. Thanks so much for joining us this morning and giving us your really valuable insight. We appreciate it. Constitutional law professor James Sample from Hofstra University.
Sentiment like that has led to discussions about invoking the 25th Amendment, a mechanism that allows a sitting president to be removed from office. Would it apply to President Trump? Hofstra University professor James Sample joined us in the last hour and spoke out about that.
There are provisions in the 25th Amendment whereby if a majority of the cabinet, the president's own people, his cabinet, and the vice president were to get together and determine that the president is unable to carry out the duties of the presidency, they would report to Congress. Congress, if it received that report, it would take a 2/3 vote in both the House and the Senate to, in essence, remove the president from acting as president.
And the professor noted this is a serious move, but also said we are in critical times. We're going to have more from Washington, D.C. and the Capitol coming up here on Today in New York. But Darlene, right now.